The line in the stars. The Galactic Council chamber hung suspended in the void between stars, a neutral ground where species from across the known universe gathered to debate, negotiate, and, in theory, cooperate. The massive crystalline structure refracted starlight into thousands of colors, a deliberate architectural choice meant to symbolize unity and diversity. Ambassador Elena Reyes sat at the Human Alliance desk, her dark eyes fixed on the Valkyrie delegation across the chamber. The insectoid aliens chittered among themselves, mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was their equivalent of laughter. 7 decades of interstellar relations had taught humanity many things about their galactic neighbors. Chief among these lessons, patience. "The Council recognizes the Valkyrie Empire," announced the moderator, a gelatinous Florbian whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. High General Krezix rose on 4 of his 6 limbs, his carapace gleaming with ceremonial oils. "Esteemed members of the Council, the Valkyrie Empire wishes to address concerns regarding human expansion into the Cygnus sector. This region has historically been under Valkyrie observation, and we find this encroachment troubling." Elena suppressed a sigh. The Cygnus sector had been uninhabited when human colony ships arrived 3 years ago. The historical observation claim was a transparent fiction, just the latest in a long series of Valkyrie obstructions. When humans had first achieved faster-than-light travel and joined the galactic community, they'd been welcomed with what seemed like open arms. Humanity brought unique perspectives, innovative technologies, and an eagerness to collaborate. But over the decades, that welcome had cooled as various powers realized humans weren't easily manipulated or controlled. The Valkyrie, in particular, seemed to have decided that humans represented a long-term threat to their expansionist ambitions. Their empire spanned 17 star systems, built on a rigid caste hierarchy and a philosophy of manifest destiny. They didn't conquer through open warfare that would violate council law, but through economic pressure, cultural infiltration, and, when necessary, carefully orchestrated incidents. Elena waited for the moderator's acknowledgement before rising to respond. "The Human Alliance thanks the Valkyrie for their concern. However, detailed surveys of the Cygnus sector conducted prior to colonization found no evidence of previous claims or ongoing observation posts. Our settlements are purely civilian, research outposts and agricultural colonies supporting no more than 50,000 people." She projected holographic survey data into the center of the chamber. "We are, as always, committed to peaceful coexistence and would welcome Valkyrie scientific exchange missions to these colonies." Krezix's compound eyes flashed with what Elena recognized as irritation. "The Valkyrie Empire appreciates the human offer, but maintains that this expansion represents a pattern of aggressive behavior. Perhaps humans fail to understand galactic protocols due to their youth as a spacefaring species." The condescension in his translator was unmistakable. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Everyone understood the subtext. Humans were primitive upstarts who needed to learn their place. "Thank you for your perspective, High General," Elena replied, keeping her voice level. "The Human Alliance has been a council member for 73 standard years and has abided by all established protocols. We seek only the same rights as other members." The debate continued for hours, with other species weighing in. Some supporting the humans' right to colonize unclaimed space, others backing the Valkyrie position. In the end, the council reached its usual compromise. A committee would be formed to study the matter further. As the session concluded, Elena gathered her materials while her aide, Marcus Chen, leaned close. "Same song, different day," he murmured. "They're escalating," Elena replied quietly. "The Valkyrie have never been this bold in open council." "You think they're planning something?" Elena nodded slightly. "Send a priority alert to Home Command. Tell them to increase surveillance around all colonies, especially in Cygnus." As they left the chamber, Elena felt a presence behind her. She turned to find Exoral, a Taurian diplomat whose species had generally maintained good relations with humanity. "Ambassador Reyes, The tall, bovine-featured alien said, voice low. A word of caution. There are rumors. The Valkyrie military caste is growing impatient with diplomatic solutions. Elena's spine stiffened. Thank you, Representative Exral. We'll take appropriate precautions. See that you do. Not all of us wish to see human potential constrained. Back aboard her diplomatic vessel, the Concordia, Elena transmitted an encrypted report to Earth's Interstellar Defense Command. For years, she'd advocated patience and diplomacy. Humanity was still building alliances, still learning the complex dance of galactic politics. But lately, the Valkyrie provocations had grown more frequent, more brazen. Admiral Hiram Jackson's weathered face appeared on her screen. That bad, huh? Worse, Elena replied. I think they're done with the pretense. Thurl basically warned me they're planning something military. Jackson's expression darkened. The Security Council was hoping for more time. Time for what exactly, Admiral? You know I can't discuss that over comms, Elena, but let's just say we haven't been sitting idle while you play nice in the Council. Elena raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned about what my government is planning? No. Should the Valkyrie be concerned? Absolutely, if they cross the line. He sighed. Look, we've been patient, 70 years of taking their jabs, their trade restrictions, their accidental border violations. But patience isn't the same as weakness. I know that. I'm just not sure the Valkyrie do. Then perhaps it's time they learned. The call ended, leaving Elena with a sense of foreboding. Throughout human history, great powers had often mistaken patience for weakness, restraint for inability. Those mistakes typically ended badly for everyone involved. Dr. Eliana Matsuo stood on the observation deck of Horizon Station, watching the binary stars of Alpha Cygni rise over the horizon of New Hope. The research outpost had been her home for nearly 3 years now, a peaceful posting dedicated to xenobotany and agricultural adaptation. The planet's unique radiation profile created fascinating mutations in Earth crops, potentially offering solutions to food shortages in less hospitable colonies. Beautiful sunrise, said Carlos Okafor, the station's security chief, as he joined her with 2 cups of coffee. Ileana accepted one gratefully. Never gets old. How are the new defensive systems coming along? Online as of yesterday, Carlos replied. Though I still think Admiral Jackson is being paranoid. We're a civilian research station in the middle of nowhere. The middle of disputed nowhere, Eliana corrected. And after that transport ship was harassed last month. Carlos nodded grimly. I know. Better safe than sorry. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert from the communications center. Carlos' wrist display flashed red. Unidentified vessels approaching system edge. He read, suddenly all business. Multiple signatures, formation consistent with Valkyrie military configuration. Ileana felt her heart rate accelerate. Maybe they're just passing through. Maybe, Carlos said, but his expression said otherwise. I need to get to the command center. You should. The station's alarm system activated, a pulsing tone that meant only one thing. Incoming attack. Impossible. Eliana breathed. We're a civilian outpost. The council laws won't protect us if no one's left to testify. Carlos finished grimly. Get to the shelter. Now. As they raced through the corridors, Eliana's scientific mind catalogued details even through her fear. The station shook as the first impacts hit their shields. Around her, colleagues rushed to emergency positions or evacuation points, faces taut but movements disciplined. Humanity had prepared for this possibility, even while hoping it would never come. In the command center, chaos reigned beneath a veneer of military precision. Tactical displays showed 5 Valkyrie warships in attack formation, their energy signatures blazing as they fired again and again. Shields at 40%, called out Lieutenant Park from the defense console. They're using pulse cannons, military grade. Carlos took command immediately. Send the emergency broadcast. Full encryption, tight beam to the nearest relay. Get everyone to the shelters and prep the evacuation pods. They're jamming our long-range comms, another officer reported. Use the quantum entanglement channel, Carlos ordered. That's what it's for. Ileana watched in horror as the tactical display showed their outer research facilities being systematically destroyed. They're targeting everything, she whispered. Labs, greenhouses, even the residential sectors. This isn't a military strike, Carlos said grimly. It's extermination. The station rocked again, harder this time. Lights flickered, and several consoles went dark. Shields failing, Lieutenant Park shouted. Direct hit on power core containment. Carlos turned to Ileana, his expression deadly serious. Get to evacuation pod Alpha. Now. That's an order, Doctor. But someone has to survive to tell what happened here, he said. The QE message might not get through. As Ileana ran for the evacuation bay, the station's artificial gravity fluctuated. Through viewport windows, she could see Valkyrie fighters strafing the colony buildings below. Fire bloomed across the landscape where, just minutes ago, she'd watched a peaceful sunrise. She barely made it to the pod before a massive explosion rocked the station. Emergency systems launched the pod automatically, propelling her away from the disintegrating research facility. Through tears, she watched Horizon Station break apart, secondary explosions consuming what the Valkyrie weapons had missed. The pod systems reported 3,842 human life signs on New Hope when the attack began. As her tiny vessel accelerated toward the system's edge, that number dropped precipitously. By the time she reached the jump point, the counter read 0. Nearly 4,000 civilians, researchers, farmers, teachers, children, gone. As the pod prepared for its emergency jump, Ileana's grief crystallized into something colder, sharper. For decades, humanity had chosen diplomacy over confrontation, cooperation over conflict. They had restrained their military development, shared their medical advances, respected the boundaries and customs of other species. And this was their reward. The quantum engines engage, hurling the pod into superluminal space. Ileana Matsuo, the sole survivor of New Hope Colony, closed her eyes as her tears floated in the Zerog environment. She wasn't a military strategist or a politician. She was a botanist who had just watched thousands of her people die for the crime of existing in space someone else wanted. But as she drifted between stars, one thought consumed her. There would be consequences. The news reached Earth 8 days later, when Ileana's pod was recovered by a patrol vessel. By then, the Valkyrie had already presented their version of events to the Galactic Council, claiming the humans had been developing biological weapons and that the limited intervention had been necessary to prevent a greater threat. Evidence was presented: fabricated research logs, doctored communication records. Without survivors or intact facilities to contradict them, the Valkyrie narrative might have prevailed. Except for one thing. The quantum entanglement message had gone through after all. Compressed data, sensor logs, and visual recordings of the unprovoked attack. Irrefutable evidence of a massacre. President Amara Okonkwo sat alone in the Oval Office, reviewing the casualty lists for the third time. Outside her windows, the Washington Monument stood illuminated against the night sky, a reminder of human persistence through adversity. The door opened without a knock, protocol abandoned in the crisis, and Admiral Jackson entered with General Cheng of the Global Space Force and Director Lowenthal of Intelligence Services. Madam President, Jackson began, the Security Council is assembled. Okonkwo nodded slowly. The Valkyrie ambassador left orbit an hour ago, Director Lowenthal reported. No explanation given. They know we know, General Cheng said grimly. The President stood, straightening her jacket. And what does the Galactic Council say about this atrocity? A heavy silence filled the room before Admiral Jackson answered. They've called for an investigation, a process that could take months, even years. While the evidence degrades and witnesses disappear, Lowenthal added. President Okonkwo walked to the window, staring up at the stars barely visible through Washington's light pollution. Somewhere up there, thousands of families were about to learn their loved ones had been murdered. Somewhere up there, the killers were probably celebrating their victory. 73 years, she said quietly. We've played by their rules for 73 years, kept our military development restrained, shared our medical advances, respected their boundaries and customs. She turned to face the three leaders. And this is our reward. What are your orders, Madam President? General Cheng asked. Okonkwo's expression hardened. Implement Directive Omega. Admiral Jackson inhaled sharply. You're certain? Once initiated. I'm aware of the implications. Admiral, she interrupted. But the line has been crossed. They believed our restraint was weakness. Our diplomacy was fear. Our patience was surrender. Her voice grew colder with each word. It's time they learned how wrong they were. The three military leaders exchanged glances before nodding in unison. How do we respond to the Council's calls for dialogue? Lowenthal asked. We don't, President Okonkwo stated flatly. As of this moment, Earth has no official response to give. No statements. No representatives at council meetings. No ships in foreign ports. Complete withdrawal, General Cheng said, understanding dawning in his eyes. For how long? Asked Jackson. The president turned back to the window, to the stars that had once promised so much hope. Until we're ready. The decision made, the orders given, humanity began its transformation. For 7 decades, they had been the reasonable ones, the compromisers, the species willing to take the long view, that ended with New Hope Colony. As President Okonkwo left the Oval Office that night, she paused beside a fragment of moon rock displayed in a glass case, a relic from humanity's first tentative steps into space. The small plaque beneath it bore words from a poet long dead. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Humanity had been gentle for too long. Now came the rage. And across the stars, no one was prepared for what would follow.